Hey guys, we are on day 81 of our Bible reading plan, and we are closing out the book of Deuteronomy today. We'll be reading chapter 32 and 33 and 34. Additionally, we're going to be spending some time in the Psalms. Today we're going to be reading Psalm 91. And Moses is going to be reciting a song. It's really beautiful. There's a lot of poetry in this reading today in chapter 32. He's going to be reciting this song in the presence of the whole assembly of Israel, and in it he proclaims God's goodness and might and his righteous deeds and warnings and judgment for Israel if they don't follow what the Lord is calling them to. And then in chapter 33, Moses pronounces the blessings over Israel, the reminder of God's promises to his people. In verse 28, he says, "So Israel will live in safety. Jacob will dwell secure in the land of grain and new wine where the heavens drop dew. Blessed are you, Israel, who is like you, a people saved by the Lord. He is your shield and helper and your glorious sword. Your enemies will cower before you, and you will tread on their heights." And here at the end of chapter 33, it's just this beautiful picture of God's promise and blessing over the people as they prepare to enter into the promised land. And then in chapter 34, we're going to come to the end of the life of Moses. And Moses is going to get to go up onto the mountaintop. He's going to get to view the promised land, Canaan, from Mount Nebo, and then he is going to pass away on top of that mountain, and he's not going to get into the promised land. Joshua has been filled with the Spirit because Moses has laid hands on him and prayed for him as the Lord has commanded Moses to do. Even though Moses isn't going into the promised land, he's still faithful to fulfill what the Lord calls him to do. The Lord has raised up and commissioned this new leader, Joshua, for Israel, and Joshua is going to be leading them into the promised land. And Moses is faithful through all of this to do what God is still asking him to do. And then we read Psalm 91. And at the beginning it says, "Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty." And the entire psalm is this beautiful picture of what God's faithfulness looks like to his faithful people and what his protection looks like. And it's just this moment of encouragement to God's people to stand in confidence in the call, in the promises, in the blessings the Lord has for them as they're going into this new land. And there's this sense at the end of chapter 34 of Moses' faithfulness throughout his lifetime. You see, the book closes by saying, "Since then, no prophet has risen in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face, who did all the signs and wonders the Lord sent him to do in Egypt, to Pharaoh and to all of his officials and to his whole land. For no one has ever shown the mighty power or performed the awesome deeds that Moses did in the sight of all of Israel." And we have this sense that while God's decision concerning Moses' life still stands, that he doesn't get to go into the promised land, that at the end of the book of Deuteronomy, at the close of the account, we have this summation of his life, that there is no one like him, that there is no one else that the Lord has used before or since like Moses to display his power to his people. And here at the end of Deuteronomy, the summation of his life is overall faithfulness. He still lays hands on Joshua in obedience to the Lord. He still declares in faithfulness that the Lord will be faithful to his people. He still believes in the promises God has made to Israel, his people, and he still faithfully declares God's goodness up to the very end of his days. Even though he doesn't get to go into the promised land, he is still faithful. And that reminds me that this earth is not our final destination. It is not our promised land. Our final destination is an eternity in heaven that we've been given through Jesus' death and resurrection and forgiveness of our sins. That's our final destination. And we may not see God's kingdom fully realized here on this earth in our lifetimes, but that shouldn't stop any of us from living faithfully according to all that God is calling us to do and according to all that God commanding us to do here on this earth. And so my prayer today is that one day, when the end of our lives draws near, that the summation of our lives would be as Moses, that we were faithful to all that God had called us to do while we were here on this earth, that we were faithful to live our best according to his ways and his commands all the way and to the very end, in spite of our missteps, in spite of our mistakes, in spite of misgivings along the way, that the overall summation of our life, just as it is here for Moses, would be one of faithfulness, so that one day when we enter his courts, we would each hear, "Well done, good and faithful servant." All right, guys, have a great day. I can't wait to hear your comments and your thoughts on your reading today.